the Retro Network podcast.
That's nothing new, sweetheart. You enjoy it, but it's from well before your time.
And that was a segue I had not intended, but good for you.
The flagship show for the Retro Network podcast channel.
Yes, this is the TRN podcast. Jason and Mickey with you.
Yes!
Get ready for the latest pop culture news.
We've got plenty of recurrent events headlines to get to.
Star Trek episode 49. Cobra la 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 la.
Wow, we're still making Tomb Raider movies?
What is up with that?
And topical discussions on all that stuff we grew up with and just can't leave in the past.
If I commissioned somebody to write me a song about the feeling I get when I think about the 80s, this would be it. Defunct department store mascots that should be Funko Pops.
The little elf from Heels.
All right, Funko, are you listening? Probably not. Did you watch a lot of Mr. Rogers?
No, I couldn't stand it.
Really? You hater. You freaking Mr. Rogers hater.
And now, here are your hosts for the Retro Network podcast, Jason.
Mental note taken.
And Mickey.
Have you ever had an afternoon after-nap hangover?
And welcome back to another week on the Retro Network podcast. You've got Jason here. Mickey is also here. How's your week been, man?
It's been busy. Nothing exciting. Just been busy. I hadn't got to do anything fun or anything for myself this week.
I've been hanging out over there on ESPN Plus for pretty much the entire week, watching the 30 for 30 stuff we've been talking about, you know. The one I watched just the other night was the Nature Boy one. Have you seen that one?
Ooh, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. No, I hadn't seen it, but I know so much about his life, I probably don't have to see it.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I found one on Amazon that was on Ted DiBiase.
Yeah.
And that one was really good. And it's just, I don't know, it was weird. Like, they both had pretty much the same path. You know, they were essentially the biggest show-offs in each of the, you know, like WCW and WWF, as far as throwing money and the women and just living that rich lifestyle, and how their end path is almost polar opposite. Just really interesting stories. I'd recommend both of those.
So is it alluding to the fact that Ted is a little better off financially than Rick at this point in life?
Well, that, and he's still tight-knit with his family, his wife, and Rick, and he was just flat out honest in the documentary, and how he lived his life and pretty much gave his life to wrestling. And going through several marriages, he lost his son, and just the turmoil surrounding his whole life, and how Ted DiBiase was pretty much there and kind of put his foot in the sand at one point and said, enough's enough. And his wife found out about everything that was going on and forgave him, took him back, and then trying to go through explaining it all to his sons, and in the relationship with his sons, because he had a son that was in wrestling for a while too. And so it's just interesting how they were on the same path and just kind of did one went left, one went right, you know, almost at the end of their careers. Very interesting. And then last night I binged the entire Lakers Celtics Best of Enemies series. There's a 3-episode documentary. I think it's, 2 of them are an hour and 40 and one is an hour. So 3 hours and 40 minutes? I watched I couldn't stop watching. And that's my golden era of basketball, you know, when I got really involved and became a Lakers fan. I think you said before you're a Celtics fan, right?
I am.
So that's a nice little dichotomy we have here on the podcast. It's narrated by Ice Cube. He kind of has the Lakers side, and then Donnie Wahlberg is the narrator for the Celtics side. And the first one just kind of leads up to that first meeting in the 84 finals. And then the middle one that's in an hour, that goes through the 84 finals. And the last one is their last meeting, which was 87, and then the legacy kind of leading after that. So it was really cool, and just the way that they did it, and the back and forth, and hearing Donnie and Ice Cube talk, you know, about the teams and stuff. It's just very well done.
Well, if you haven't watched, and you may have watched it, there's from the first season of 30 for 30, there's the one called Small Potatoes, Who Killed the USFL.
Yes, I've seen that one.
That's good with all the Donald Trump stuff in it.
Yeah.
And
You've seen the Marino versus Elway?
oh yeah, that's probably my favorite one.
That's really good. I love the Reggie Miller versus the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
That one's really good. I think later I think it's like season 2 or more recent, the Fab Five one.
Yeah, that's really good.
I'm trying to think what are some other my favorites there, but
for listeners who are retro-minded like us, there are a few that would really stand out as topical for our life. There's the one called Big Shot, where that con man tried to buy the New York Islanders and actually took control of the team for a while with no money before they finally caught on. Oh, that is really interesting. King's Ransom would be good for our listeners. That's the story of Wayne Gretzky being traded to the LA Kings in the 90s.
Seen that one.
Very topical. And of course, the one we talked about, the one set in June, 1994, the day of the OJ chase and everything else going on. What was that other one called? Was it about the San Francisco earthquake during the World Series? There's one on it too. I can't remember what the title of it is.
Yeah, that one's good.
But, yeah, so there's several on there that our listeners, even if you're not into sports, these were big events that were all over the news that you probably remember, and you get a little more information on. So people should check it out if they've got ESPN Plus.
The one on Bo Jackson is really good. Have you seen that one?
That one I have not watched.
It kind of goes through his mythos of, he could do this and he could outrun a deer and all this stuff that kind of like popped up, during his early days in college and stuff, and just kind of I don't know, his whole legacy too. I mean, it's really fun, and they have a lot of these have little animation elements to them too. Even that Ric Flair one I just watched, they do some animation in between, kind of recreating scenes and stuff that he's talking about. And I like the way that they do that it's not all just sit down and listen to the people and show footage. They add little elements like that in between. And they do that for Bo Jackson too.
I don't know where you'd find them now, but on the website on ESPN, when 30 for 30 was really hot and popular, they used to do those 30 for 30 short takes where it'd be like a 15-minute thing. Those are really good too.
Yeah, and those are on ESPN Plus too. I've seen the
whole, are they?
Yeah, I've seen a whole a banner or section for just the shorts, and I've kind of clicked through those, but I haven't watched. I don't know if I've watched any of those. I'll have to see. But
they're made in the same vein as a 30 for 30. They're all well produced and stuff. The thing is, they're just short subjects that didn't need a whole hour and a half episode. You could do it in 20 minutes, and so they're really good. There is a 30 for 30 podcast. I don't know if you're aware of. I listen to it a lot too, depending on the subject. It could be something like, my favorite one is about when they turned the lights on at Wrigley Field for the first time, and all the litigation with the people in the neighborhoods around it who didn't want it and stuff. And the reasons why, it was because there's no real parking lot at Wrigley Field. People park up and down the streets and all the neighborhoods around, and these parents have kids going to school and didn't want a lot of loud commotion at 11 o'clock at night when their kids are in bed and strangers walking up and down their street at night.
Right.
I mean, it was a great audio documentary.
Interesting. Yeah, that was late 80s, I want to say, maybe like 88. Yeah.
88.
It was a big deal. I remember it being a big deal in the sports world, and I think I even tuned in for that first game. But
yeah, you ought to look up that podcast and listen to it.
Okay.
Because that was a really good episode.
Cool. Well, speaking of podcasts, we got a couple announcements here for our feed and overall too. We've got our Drive-In 95 first episode coming on Tommy Boy. Just finished watching it, and I know, Mick, I think you're getting ready to watch it here maybe this weekend and try to knock out that episode.
Going to try to fit it in this weekend, yeah. But even if I don't get to watch it, which would defeat the point, but even if I don't, I've seen it so many times.
Right.
I'm.
Yeah. So we've got a post over there on Patreon, or there's also some on, social media, Twitter, Facebook, that I've put up there, wanting your comments that we can include in the podcast as feedback and just get your take on it. We've got a story already that came in from Adam. So,
was. I can't, I'm sure we'll recount that story on the show. That was funny.
That was good. So we've got that coming. So head on over to Patreon. If you come over and subscribe at the $2 level, you get all of our outtakes and stories, podcasts, and all of our other content, access to our Slack chat. and some featured articles that are only over on Patreon. If you come in at that $5 level, that's when you're going to get our Drive-In 95 series. And we'll probably be doing some more stuff in there too, other than just the Drive-In, to give you some more episodes along the way. And, obviously we'll probably do something new next year, but we're planning to release one of those a month as kind of a monthly add-on. And then if you want to come on the show with us, we still have that option available over there too. If you come in at the $10 level, we'll give you a guest spot on our show. You can come in. We can do an interview. If you want to sit in for the entire podcast, like some of our friends have done, Tony would love to have you come on and kind of run the show with us.
Yeah, and plug whatever
as well.
You got to plug. And
yeah, right. So check out Patreon this week, if you would please, and make sure you leave your comments about Tommy Boy. We'd love to hear those.
And there's two easy ways to get there. On the retronetwork.com, at the top right-hand side, you'll see our Patreon link, or you can just go to patreon.com/theretronetwork.
That's right. And speaking of the website, you kind of did a redesign this week. It's looking good, man. We've got some players out there, so you can just basically watch Mick's latest Wax Pack flashback from the homepage. You can listen to the latest podcasts. And we've got a new feature. We were kind of going back and forth, even on the air, about a calendar and this calendar idea that we've had, and trying to plug in some of these recurrent events, headlines and stuff into a calendar for you. And coming out of that 2020 preview episode we did a couple weeks ago, I just basically plugged in a lot of those right into the calendar on Google, and now we've got it embedded on the website. So you can just basically go over there in the lower right-hand corner. There's a little add to your Google Calendar button, and you can get it sent right to your phone, and you'll get updates once a day when there's events that are going to be happening that day, just as a little reminder. And all you got to do is you click on the event, say like there's a new Blu-ray coming out, and you want to make sure you get that. I've got links right there to go over to Amazon to get your Blu-ray. If you're going to, like, there was 2 movies that were released yesterday that were kind of in our retro theme. The Doolittle and then the Bad Boys for Life. And I've got links there to click over and get tickets. In the Picard coming up next week, I've got that in there. You can click over, start your free trial on CBS All Access. So trying to make it as easy and simple as possible for you to connect with some of these recurrent events that we talk about each week. I'm really excited about that. I just wish it didn't look like something from AOL in 1995.
Well, you and I talked about that off the air, but I've been thinking about it since we said that. It just fits what we do, though, right? I mean,
true.
It looks like it's something out of the 90s. So. And yeah, it's just right there on the main page, the retronetwork.com, down towards the bottom. It's the calendar. If you can just go check it out, even if you don't want to add it to your own calendar or your phone. Right. Check it out and see what else coming up for a while.
Yeah. So I preloaded a lot of stuff for January, some for February, and I'm going to just keep adding to that. I don't want to get too far out on it just because stuff changes. And even this week through my recurrent events feed, I was seeing a lot of stuff getting moved around, movies and this and that. So don't want to get too far ahead. Maybe some major stuff like, movies or something like that that's more set in stone that are coming out this year. But yeah, so it's just, just head over there and check it out. Tell us what you think about that. Had some pretty good feedback from our staffers this week who they were, and our Patreon people. I just kind of put over there on our Patreon chat, hey, got this idea, go check it out. So that's kind of what you get with our Patreon chat too. We'll throw some stuff out there like that. But yeah, so go check that out this week. Coming up in this podcast, of course, we've got the recurrent events coming, including, is Quantum Leap returning? Are they going to do a kind of reboot or a continuation series? Well, we're going to discuss that. And then in the TRN Time Machine, sponsored by Retro Days, we've got a new kind of format for you. We're calling it the Time Capsule. And being in 1995 for our drive-in podcast series, we thought, hey, let's look at 1995 and see what was going on. So we're going to do kind of an overview of the year in pop culture. And then we're also going to drop in like one item, each of us, as a time capsule item. What would we put in a time capsule to kind of represent 1995. So this should be fun, man. This kind of came off the fly, and the more I've been thinking about the format and everything, I think this is going to be real fun to go back and look at, years past.
Mm-hmm.
So that is coming up, but first, let's get into those recurrent events. All right, leading off our recurrent events this week, a script for National Treasure 3 is reportedly in the works. And I think this came about because the writer for Bad Boys for Life, Chris Bremner, is the one that's linked to this National Treasure 3 script for Disney. And supposedly Jerry Bruckheimer is coming back to produce. So this is something I think has been rumored for many, many, many years. And soon after number 2 came out, which was Book of Secrets, I think there was even some quotes around that time that they're already working on number three, and it just never happened. But the first one, I would say, is pretty high. It would definitely be in our top 5 for movies that the wife and I both can agree are just great and fun to watch. We love the first National Treasure. Yeah, so I'm on board for number 3, definitely.
Well, I'm hoping, and the reason all those rumors swirled at the time, I'm hoping they follow up on that throwaway scene in number 2 where the president tells Ben to look at page whatever.
Right, yeah.
And he is, I think we can help you with that. And I hope they play off of that because that was a good hook.
Yeah.
And hey, let's be honest, Chris Bremner is what he is. The whole reason they're making this movie is because I told them they needed to on the podcast.
Yeah. And, apparently Nick Cage will do anything right now. So he's definitely going to be available. But I'm excited for that. I wonder if maybe they'll actually do a wide release or if it'll be like a Disney Plus thing. I would think it'd be
a wide release because they made so much money off those first 2. They'd be, well, I'm not going to say what they'd be. It would be foolish of them not to do a wide release.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Moving on to gaming news, Japan is. Why does this only happen in Japan? We need some cool stuff like this in the U.S. Seems like they do some really neat stuff over there. Anyway, Japan is opening Super Nintendo World. I believe this is at Universal Studios in Japan, and it's pretty much described as a life-size living video game. Did you watch the trailer for this that they released this last week?
I did not.
It's just, I don't know. It's like being... Everybody's walking around with like a Nintendo Switch, which is a little weird, and everybody walks around with their phones now anyway. But imagine like 1,000 people being in sync and playing one of this, a game together, and being surrounded by the scenery of Super Mario, and it just looks like so much fun. We need like a whole video game theme park somewhere.
Yeah, and they need it to where you're walking along and all of a sudden you hear a bullet fire and you have to dodge it real quick.
Well,
make it realistic.
In the trailer, those huge blocks that come down at you in Super Mario Brothers with the face, and they're like running through a tunnel, and those things are coming down behind them. I was like, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be in the park, but it would be fun just to. Yeah, I don't know. You think about that game show that Nick had, Nick Arcade. You remember that where they did like a green screen and you're almost like inside the game? I always thought that was like the coolest show ever. And even just to be able to do something like that would be fun in a theme park. But I don't know. This seems a little bit more three-dimensional as you're kind of roaming through. So interested to see what other people think of that. How about some food talk? We love talking about food, and we've talked about Pringles before. I seen that spotted this week was rotisserie chicken Pringles. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I wonder if they've repackaged the chicken flavor from the turducken pack, and maybe it might be the same that was in that.
Is that what they called it, rotisserie chicken? Or
no, they just called it chicken, but I mean, you slap a fancier name on it when it's going to be its own thing.
What did you say was your favorite in that pack?
The cranberry sauce.
So none of you didn't like really any of the meat flavors?
Well, they were okay. The turkey was okay and stuff, and I loved their limited edition roasted turkey Pringles. So I mean, these rotisserie chicken would be good. I almost imagine they'll taste like they put out a ramen noodle Pringles for a while.
Oh,
And
really?
it was a chicken ramen noodle. I bet this probably tastes a lot like that too. So,
I don't remember that one.
well, my kids are Pringle connoisseurs. We've tried everything.
Okay. Well, I thought you would that would be on your radar if you saw that coming out. Here's one that just, I don't know, is weird. Dunkin' Donuts has a Snoop Dogg inspired glazed donut Beyond Meat breakfast sandwich. This is going to be available through, well, actually, it might be almost done. It says available through January the 19th. But, oh my gosh, it's a plant-based meat patty.
So you're doing it too. Plant-based meat. Folks, it ain't meat. Call it whatever you want. Make up a name. But it ain't. Quit calling it meat. Quit living off the legacy of deliciousness that is meat. Form your own brand. Leave meat alone. If you want to eat a soybean and turd patty, that's your choice. But leave meat out of it.
I don't know. It was a take kind of off the Krispy Kreme burger, except it's not a burger. But Beyond breakfast sausage patty, egg, cheese, and a sliced glazed donut as your sandwich part. So I don't know. So there's a regular Beyond sausage sandwich coming later this month. So that's why they're kind of gearing up for that by putting it between two donuts. But I don't know. I agree with you. I mean, don't put the meat in there if it's not meat. But I saw that even Burger King now has moved their, what do they call it? Impossible Whopper.
Uh-huh.
They've moved it to their whatever 2 for $5 menu. I still have refused to try that. I don't think I ever will.
Well, this may not interest anybody here on the show, and it's way off topic, but that Beyond Meat product, whatever stuff, they say if you look at the list of ingredients on it, it has so much harmful stuff in it, it's probably worse for you than actually eating meat. So, but it don't, at least then it's good for vegans or vegetarians or whatever, and it makes them happy, but it's not good for you.
I hear you. Okay, moving along to some streaming news. CBS All Access is rebooting some classic kids shows. Mr. Magoo, an animated Lassie, and George of the Jungle. These are all animated shows. Those are actually dropping, I had it on the calendar, January 17th, which is today. Actually, it was yesterday as we were recording this. So I know you've got CBS All Access, Mick. You'll have to check these out and give us a report back on what you think of these new versions of some of these classic shows.
Yeah, no thanks. I didn't like the original versions, so I'm not interested in the new version.
You didn't watch Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol or any of those?
I've seen it, but I never was a fan of. I was a big fan of ABC Family back in the 90s, or back back then, the CBN, Christian Broadcast Network. And they used to show Lassie and all that stuff. I would wait and turn it on after Lassie went off because I just wasn't a big fan of Lassie.
Yeah.
Ain't no dogs really that smart, okay? It was all fake.
I don't know. I thought it was cool that they're going back and rebooting something other than stuff from the 80s,
Well, now, yeah, it is, and I'm a big fan of rebooting all this stuff because whether I like it or not, there is a audience who does, and anything old that we can bring back for any of us, I'm all on board with. So good for them on bringing it back. It's just not my cup of tea.
Now, like we teased at the top of the show, NBC streaming, what we call the Peacock app, is eyeing a Quantum Leap series revival. If you go over and click on the article that I found here on Comic Book Resources, there's really not a lot of information on it yet. It says that they're basically considering it. I don't know how they would essentially pull it off, if they just kind of reboot the whole thing and start over, or if somebody else gets caught up in there. The classic series, I don't know. I will go back and watch an episode here and there, and mainly the ones that I remember, some of my favorites. I don't remember the last time I tried to go through like an entire season, but what did you think of the original show? Were you a fan?
I was a big fan. And the beauty of a show that features time travel and any kind of quantum physics is, even if you're going to reboot it all these years later, anything you do, you can make sense storyline wise. You can have some young actor, like let's say this series is designed to pick up after the original series. You can have some young actor leap into some place and the guy, behind the scenes be like, whoa, I don't know what you went through, but it changed the way you look and da 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 da. It's so simple to explain that stuff away. So any way they want to do it, it'll make sense. If it's a reboot, starting over, just new actors, same story, or they change a few things. I don't know what Peacock is going to cost. I don't know that I would want to pay for another service, but Quantum Leap is a show that just right there, I'm like, ooh, now that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a show I'd consider trying Peacock for.
Yeah, if they would have made like history class in school just watching an episode of Quantum Leap, that would have been the greatest thing ever, because I think I learned more from that show than an actual, sit down book reading history class.
School was like that.
Yeah.
You could have Quantum Leap as your history class, like Magic School Bus as your science class, or Bill Nye or whatever. Reading Rainbow could be your English class.
Oh, there's an article right there for the Retro Network, man.
Double Dare could have been Phys Ed class.
Phys Ed, yes. Nice. Oh, we got to put an article together, man.
You know what? I can actually do that. My kids are homeschooled. We have an all-new curriculum, folks.
There you go.
I wouldn't have even minded going to summer school at that point.
Yeah, no kidding. TV education. Oh, man. What a radical concept. Yeah, I'm going to do I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to be doing a Peacock article over there on the Retro Network. Kind of what do we know at this point? They just released some more information on content and the pricing. I think it was yesterday as we record this, and they're going to have actually like a free version of it with ads. And I think the $5 gets you kind of more content. So you get, I think they said like 7,500 hours for free. And then they double that when you get up to the $5 level, and then they'll have like a premium without commercials as well, something like that.
For folks who don't know, the actual NBC app for smart TVs and Roku is ever evolving. And I was on there last week. You can go on as it is now and watch the latest episode of the shows that are on NBC. Mm-hmm. And, it'll stay up there for a week, and then it changes when the new episode drops. And they have some old TV series on there now. And they also have started adding movies, and this is all on their free app, and that's all ad supported, of course, like most free streaming apps. But the basic NBC app as it exists today is already a pretty nice streaming option for some folks.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on there, but I do remember watching some Knight Rider episodes, and I think I went back and rewatched the 2008 Knight Rider for some reason. I don't know, a couple years ago, I guess it's been. And I remember doing that through the NBC app. So for what it's worth, I think you're right that they've got some decent stuff over there in the meantime. But it sounds like they're still going to keep some sort of free version available to everybody that will be ad supported coming up. I think May or June this year, I think is when the release date is. Can't remember, but I'll put it in an article and we can talk about it, start a conversation on it.
Yeah, maybe we'll put that in Recurrent Events again next week and with a little more in-depth discussion.
Sure. Okay. Just read yesterday that HBO Max is developing an animated Aquaman series. Now, reading the information about it, it's only going to be a 3-part series. So like some kind of maybe 3-part miniseries. I don't understand that at all. Why go through the trouble, unless it's going to be like a movie length, 3-part deal, but it just seemed weird. You're going to choose Aquaman. Okay.
Well, if he ain't riding a seahorse, it ain't my Aquaman.
Right. They didn't have too much information on, who's voicing, or if they're going to bring in Jason Momoa as the voice or something, but yeah, looks like they're just trying to build content at this point. And now we talked about this before. HBO Max has a deal, I think, with Warner Brothers. So, and Warner Brothers releases all the DC content. So it kind of makes sense that they're going after some DC heroes. But I don't know. 3 episodes of the Aquaman coming to HBO Max. That's not going to get me to sign up, but
No.
moving along, got a couple more things here in music, and we'll wrap up Recurrent Events. They announced the inductions into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this week. And going back, if you remember, I put out a little feeler to our staff and had them choose, I think it was 5 of the nominees that they would put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And what we chose were Whitney Houston, Soundgarden, the Doobie Brothers, Motorhead, and Pat Benatar. Okay, so here's who they put in. The Doobie Brothers are going in. 9 Inch Nails, T-Rex, Depeche Mode, Whitney Houston, and Notorious B.I.G. That's your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class for 2020. I don't understand this. The nominee that led the fan vote was Dave Matthews, and they weren't inducted. So why do you even have a fan vote? I don't understand that. But there's a lot of, people up in arms. I saw people, Judas Priest, Soundgarden, Pat Benatar. That's rock. Why are you putting in Notorious B.I.G. over them? I don't know. It's just a messed up system, I think. And do what you want to do. Just don't ask the fans for their opinions if you're going to just do your own thing. That's my
look. People situation. Need to understand that a lot of this stuff is, and I'm not talking about like national politics, but all this stuff is political. They get lobbied. These people who vote on this, they get lobbied by the record labels and stuff to put somebody like T-Rex in because they know it'll be a spike in T-Rex albums and they can release vinyl and they can the Hall of Fame collection. So there's a lot of political stuff to this. I hate when people get too worked up because folks just know the system. Your favorite may never get in if politics ain't on their side. You're not going to. Yeah. I don't know. Most of these Hall of Fames are just not totally what they should be. And I'm just going to go off on a quick tangent here. People talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame. You can't put Mark McGwire in. You can't put Pete Rose in. Yeah, you can, folks. It's not called the Hall of Integrity. It's the Hall of Fame. It's the most famous people. They generated the most headlines. You can't tell the story of your sport without talking about Mark McGwire and Pete Rose, so you have to put them in. And it's the same thing with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I'm
totally pretty sure you can tell the story of the history of rock and roll without mentioning T-Rex. But
well, I'm with you on that, and even the baseball stuff. They still had to hit the ball. They still had to throw it. Whatever they had to do, they still had to do it, and they did it well. And I don't know. Well, they were juiced. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, so was the guy throwing the ball to him. Let's move on.
Right. How do you? If you take one person out, then you might as well just take the whole.
Well, that's my point. Look, quit being so holier than thou about it. The Hall of Fame tells the story of your sport from beginning to end, and you cannot tell it without those people.
That's right. Okay. Well, that's just a little take on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there. And I thought this was fun. You done
got my blood pressure up.
I'm sorry, man. Go take your pills and come back. One little note. I don't watch the Grammys. I can't remember the last time I watched the Grammys. This might get me to watch the Grammys. Apparently, Aerosmith is doing some kind of performance this year, and they're inviting a bunch of guests on, and they're going to have Run DMC on with them to kind of do a reuniting of that awesome track in the 80s. Yeah.
Have you seen what they're planning on performing? They're going to do a new version of it called Roll This Way, where they're going to be in their wheelchairs, and it's going to be Roll This Way instead of Walk This Way.
Oh, come on, man. You want to watch it.
Yeah, really, I don't. But go ahead.
Well, that was one of my favorite kind of mashups. It's kind of what introduced me really to rap music at that point in my life was that video, and just the combination of the two was great, and then you get like, who was it? Anthrax and Public Enemy later in the 80s or early 90s, and some of these fun little mashups. But in case you're going to watch the Grammys, check out the Aerosmith and Run DMC performance this year. That's all I've got for Recurrent Events this week. You can find more. You go over to the website and find the Recurrent Events column posted each Sunday. And let us know, give us some thoughts on some of these that we've posted. If we've missed something, let us know. We can throw it in the next week too. So we appreciate you listening and checking out that new calendar we have too. Hope that will be a fun resource for you. But coming up, we're going to go back in the time machine, and Mick and I are going to put together a time capsule of 1995. You won't want to miss this, man. This is going to be really fun to put together, and hopefully the execution, like you mentioned last week, will be on par with all these notes that we put together. So come back for a little time travel back to 95. Hey everyone, Jason here with a quick reminder that the brand new CBS All Access series Picard debuts in just 2 days. The Retro Network will be covering it from episode to episode right on the website. If you have not signed up yet, I would invite you to go over to theretronetwork.com and find the Picard banner in the right column. Click on that and head on over to sign up for your free trial of CBS All Access. We are proud to be an official affiliate of CBS All Access, and we can't wait to bring you those reviews from week to week. And we will be updating you throughout the year when new content for us retro-minded people hits CBS All Access. So if you would do that for me this week, as you are getting ready to watch Picard for the first time, head over to the website and click over through the banner to help us out. And also get your free trial of CBS All Access. All right, welcome back inside the TRN Time Machine, and we're headed back to 1995. But first, our Time Machine is sponsored by Retro Days. We've got a new episode alert, Mick. RD's Detention. Latest episode features The Simpsons. You got a chance to watch it yet?
Nope. I'm always in, what year is this? 2020? In about 2040, I'll probably catch up to it. No, I do make time for the RD's Detention. I just hadn't watched the Simpsons episode yet. It's been a really busy week.
Okay. Well, I know your schedule is just crazier than anybody I know, but
it's right now my daily schedule. I have about a 4-minute window with nothing going on, and most of these episodes are longer than 4 minutes. So it's hard for me to catch up.
Half today, half tomorrow, man. That's all you need.
That's true.
There's also a fun new trailer that they've made for the channel, and it's just basically a best of every episode so far to the tune of Bad Boy by Miami Sound Machine. Oh gosh, I just have fun. I've watched that a couple times, just the channel trailer of him, all the different little things that they've talked about and highlights basically of the channel. So if you haven't watched yet, just go over to the channel and watch the trailer, and you'll get an idea real quick of what they do in each episode. And who doesn't love The Simpsons and going back, checking out all that stuff? So go check out the Simpsons episode this week on the Retro Days channel on YouTube. But we're going to go back. 1995 was a pretty good transition year for me. What we're going to do, we're going to talk about kind of events that were going on in the time period. We're going to talk about first, like, where we were as far as where we were living, what we're doing. We're in school, job, what we're doing for fun. Just kind of go through our lives real quick, and we'll throw an item in the time capsule. And then we'll get on to basically pop culture, all the events going on, music, movies, TV, and food and sports. And then we've got this category that's kind of a jumble of everything. Tech, products, video games, toys is what I called it. Lots of great stuff in there going on in 1995. But let's just start with our kind of personal experience, what we were doing, where we were in 95.
Well, let's see. 95, I was a junior in high school, having a great time. I worked at the grocery store, and still, the years I spent there is still the most fun I've ever had in my working life, and still connect with some of those people and Still talk about those good old times. Of course, living here in a small town area, there wasn't a whole lot to do other than work and just go see your friends. And going to see your friends included fun stuff that you only get in rural mountain areas, like four-wheeler rodeos and farm parties, sitting out by the lake in the back seat of a car. Man, I miss those days. But yeah, but you know, you hear a lot of people that, oh, my high school years were terrible. My high school years were great. Da, da, da. You know, mine was more on the great side. I enjoyed high school, especially this time around 95 when I was driving and I was co-oping out of school going to work. So I was only there from like 8:30 to 11:30 every day. That's probably what made it so great, was I just didn't spend much time there. And, you know, this would have been the year that I was running the gambling operation out of the school store. That was in full swing, making money. So, yeah, it was a good time for me in 95.
Cool, man. Yeah, 95. Just speaking of grocery stores, everybody needs to start their working career at a grocery store, I think. Because I had such a great time, too. I worked there. I wasn't the start of my career, but it was kind of, I worked part-time during my college years later in the 90s, and that was like my fallback job if I didn't have something right out of college, which ended up happening. That's another story for another day. But I worked at a Publix for, I don't know, about a year and a half as a stock clerk. And the other stock clerks there, man, we just had this team going. It was great. We could yuck it up and have fun and still, you know, get the job done. And I don't know, there's just something about that environment it's fun for, well, I guess depending on which department you're working in, but I don't know. We had fun, man. I could tell you some stories, and maybe we'll go into that sometime about our like previous jobs or something. Maybe that's a fun episode we could do. But yeah, man, this time though, in 95, I graduated in 94 and didn't know if I wanted to go directly into college, what I wanted to do. I took a year off. I'm like, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So 95, well, the fall of 94 through all of 95, I was just kind of living at home. I had a job at a radio station downtown, and it was just more or less a transition year. So most of my friends had gone off. Several went into the military. Several went to college. So I still had a few back home, but it was mainly me working at the radio station and renting movies at the local little mom and pop rental store. I saw so many movies that year, man. And
95. And that's part of why I wanted to do drive-in on 95. I saw so many movies at the theater, and working at the grocery store, we had a video rental store in the grocery store. And so like every night after work, you're just, you know, get off at midnight. Before the video closes, you go grab whatever piques your interest. You go home and stay up late and watch it. And that was a nightly thing. I was watching old movies from the 80s I'd never seen from the first time. I was watching recently new release VHS, you know, from like the previous month, and going to the theater once or twice a week on top of it. So, yeah, I'm right there with you.
Well, finally getting to that age of 18 too, man, the whole catalog of R-rated movies came available too that you could rent and start watching some of those. So
time to watch Basic Instinct.
But it was fun. Like I remember going to the rental store and getting some of the new releases, but also just going through an entire rack of movies. I'm going to start here and I'm just going to go one by one and check all these out, basically based on the box art. And I remember doing that around that time, and like I said, a lot more movies kind of came available to you being an 18-year-old and renting movies. But yeah, I did a lot of that in 1995. I was down there several times a week at least, and then going to the theater as well. I saw a lot. And 95 too, I mean, I've got my own car. My music taste was kind of all over the place still at that point. And the radio station I worked for, I was mainly on the AM side, which was all like news, talk, and sports. I got 3 hours of Rush Limbaugh every day, and that's another podcast for another day. All the shows and stuff that we did. But the FM side was a adult contemporary station, so you got a little bit of rock and the pop stuff. So I listened to that a lot, but I was still into like dance and hip hop and rap, and my taste, I think about that time, kind of shifted into the alternative scene, and I was getting more into some of the alternative bands as well. So in '95, I was everywhere, and I was going down to the record store that was still open in the mall at the time, buying CDs. At this point, finally had a CD player. I had the Discman in my car that you hooked up through that little cassette. Remember those setups where you had to, before cars started getting CD players in them. And I had like a little pillow on the passenger seat. I'd put that Discman up there so it wouldn't skip, and just buying CDs at the local store. So that was kind of my setup for '95, and I would go off to college in the spring of '96. So it's pretty definitive year for me that I'm just kind of hanging out and trying to figure out what I want to do and having fun. So if you're going to put like a time capsule item in based on whatever your experience or something at the time, what would you throw in there?
Oh gosh, probably. I had a truck, and I started driving in '94. So I got this truck in '95. I guess it would have been Christmas '94. My brother, actually, one of the coolest things he's ever done for me in my life, which has not been very many, bought me a Pioneer CD player and installed it in that truck for me for Christmas. So like December '94, I had a CD player installed in the truck.
Nice.
And that just made you like the coolest person at school. So I'm going to say a CD player from a vehicle CD player.
I'm going to throw in a T-shirt from that radio station I worked at, because even to this day, my buddy Wyatt, who also worked at that station, he went off to basic training, I think in February of '95. He went in the Air Force, and he worked there. And because I guess I was there during the day, he mainly worked night shifts and stuff. I was kind of closer to the program director and the general manager, and I got myself a T-shirt. And those things were pretty coveted in my town, even among my friends. Oh, you got a radio, you got the WQIX T-shirt. So I'm going to toss in that.
Small town too, then, huh?
Yes, yeah. So I'm going to toss in a T-shirt from that radio station, just as a personal note. All right, let's get on to some of the events that happened in '95. Probably the biggest thing going on in '95 as far as national news was the OJ trial. And it finally wrapped, I think, later in that year. 150 million people viewed the verdict on TV that year. That's just crazy. And then you had all of these news channels and even the networks that were preempting like the soap operas in the afternoon just to play like wrap-ups of the OJ trial and some of the live coverage. So it was just, everywhere, and everybody was talking about it. And those people, all of the lawyers and I even made a Judge Ito reference last week of all things, but they were all like celebrities at that point because they were just on TV every day and everybody knew what was going on. And it was the real start of reality television. I would say so. Yeah.
Court TV spawned out of the success of airing the trial. That's what started Court TV. So
yeah. So that was a big deal. One of the saddest events really of the year was the OKC bombing. Timothy McVeigh became a household name, and what was it? Can't remember off the top of my head. 180. Yeah, it was way too many. That happened around that bombing. I've even kind of stayed away from. It was just horrible, and I've tried to stay away from news coverage and even documentaries around that later in life, just because it was very tragic. Also going on that year, we had this incident in Bosnia where a F-16 was shot down behind enemy lines, and that actually became loosely based on the movie Behind Enemy Lines in 2001. Scott O'Grady, he was the pilot, and 6 days later they rescued him in Bosnia. So that's one of my favorite military type movies. I love Behind Enemy Lines, and it's very, very loosely based though, because if you read a little bit about the story and about his life, and he was a little upset about the way he was portrayed even in the movie, but that was one of the stories going on in 1995. We had the end of Operation Desert Storm. That was a continuing story. Yeah, finally, for several years. And then let's get into some more, I guess, fun stuff or happier stuff of the year. Mr. Brad Pitt was voted the sexiest man alive in People magazine. We had the launch of eBay in 1995.
As mainly a place to do what?
I don't know. Like,
you don't know? Okay, apparently you don't know where I'm going with this, do you?
Okay.
You know how eBay started, right? It was actually an online trading post type buy and sell place for Pez dispensers.
Yeah.
For people who collected Pez dispensers. And the eBay we know now grew out of that. And it pretty much, Pez dispenser, small community, and then some folks started listing some Beanie Babies and stuff on there at the beginning of that craze. And then boom, eBay's off and running with Beanie Babies. And then everybody's like, well, if they're going to sell that here, I'm going to list my Star Wars Luke Skywalker figure from 1970, whenever.
So yeah, that was that was a big deal eventually. And I remember selling stuff during my college years in the later 90s on eBay. That was kind of like my first exposure.
You know what the first thing I sold on eBay was? I didn't have very many of them, but I sold all of my LJN WWF Superstars figures on there.
Really?
Yeah, talk about kicking myself.
And you probably got way too little for them.
No, they went for some decent money even then.
Yeah?
That was surprising, yeah.
One of the first things I bought on there was the complete set of James Bond Moonraker trading cards.
That's a pretty solid pick.
Yeah. I can't remember what I paid for them, but that was one of the first things I remember. 1995 was the first year that Amazon was online and sold its first book.
Okay, you remember the first thing you bought off eBay. Can you remember what the first thing you bought off Amazon was?
No.
I do.
Oh, yeah?
I bought my dad a birthday present off of there because, you think back then it's hard to really find stuff without Amazon that we know today. He was a big fan of the original Walking Tall movies, and they had a 3-pack collection on VHS of all the original Walking Tall movies. And that's the first thing I bought off of Amazon. Because,
Cool.
you go to if you grew up in a bigger area and had a big mall or a lot of shopping options, maybe you would come across something like that. But here with a Kmart and a Rose's, you just weren't going to come across some novelty item like this. So Amazon, for people like us in our area, was, well, for the people like me who embraced it, who were early adopters of technology, it was a godsend. I was given for a few years there in the late 90s the best gifts anybody were getting because I was the only one in my immediate circle of family who was ordering stuff off the internet.
Yeah.
And people were like, well, here's a cheese sampler. Merry Christmas. And it's like, here, Dad, I got you the whole series of, Tales of the Gold Monkey. Where the hell do you find that? You're just giving out the coolest presents.
Well, I never had a home computer, so I didn't get my first exposure to a lot of these websites until I was in college and I was at the computer lab. So yeah, like I didn't start buying stuff on Amazon until probably like 97 or 98, several years later.
Yeah, I started buying in 96.
Yeah, that's pretty early adopter then. All right, let's get a few more headlines here. 95 was the last year that Calvin and Hobbes produced a new comic strip. You don't think about comic strips anymore and how that was the first thing I went for usually in the newspaper as a kid, but even
it was a
later
morning ritual.
Yeah.
I would sit down for breakfast, and I'm talking about from the time I was 8 until I was 18, living with Mom and Dad. Every morning she was fixing breakfast, and I pull out that page because our local newspaper had comics on one side of the page, and down the other side it had the jumble and the word games, and then on the back you had the TV listings and Today in History and the interesting facts, and I would just devour both sides of that page over breakfast. So I grew up loving comic strips. Never was a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes though. I read it, but it just wouldn't be in my top 5 or 10.
Yeah, me neither. It was all about Garfield, Wizard of Id, Beetle Bailey,
The Far Side.
Far Side, yeah. Far Side was big. I like the Far Side because it was just usually just one big picture.
Yeah.
It was all right there for you. I've got a book somewhere I bought, probably at Books A Million or somewhere, that's just a compilation of Far Side strips, and I love that book, man. I'll go back and pick that thing up and go through it. Even today, it's great stuff. All right, let's go through a few births and deaths in '95. Make you guys feel old. American fashion model Gigi Hadid. She was born. Post Malone. A couple sports people. Ezekiel Elliott, the Cowboys running back. Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs quarterback. And Gabby Douglas, the Olympic gymnast, all born in '95. Deaths that year. We lost Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. We lost Eazy-E from the NWA. Orville Redenbacher passed away.
Oh, bless his soul.
We lost Selena that year. There was a big story about that and her murder, and for several days after that was top news. Very tragic. We lost Howard Cosell, the sports announcer, reporter, very famous voice. Friz Freleng, who was the animator for Looney Tunes, passed away that year. We lost Wolfman Jack, the famous DJ. Bob Ross, of course, the probably most famous television painter. We lost Mickey Mantle, Yankee and Hall of Famer. And on Christmas Day, 1995, Dean Martin, the crooner, singer, longtime partner with Jerry Lewis there, passed away. So that was a little glimpse of 95 through the events. And what are you going to put in the time capsule just based on the events of 95 that we talked about?
Well, if it don't have to be a physical item, I'll put just Amazon. Well, no, you know what? It will be a physical item. I'll put in that Walking Tall 3-movie VHS collection.
I wrote down, I'm just going to put a money order that's made out to eBay seller. Because that's the last time I remember buying money orders, was when I'm early days of eBay,
Yeah, gosh. Well, that brings back memories, don't it?
Yeah, not good memories.
Buy something, then you have to go somewhere and buy a money order and then mail it to somebody.
Yeah, heaven forbid you do a personal check and have to wait 2 weeks for it to clear, and then you get your item sent, and then gosh, what a process that was back then. Let's get on to some music. Let's talk about the top singles and top albums of '95. Top 5 singles. Number 5, Boys to Men on Bended Knee. Mm-hmm. Number 4 was Seal, Kiss from a Rose.
Seal? Who is Seal?
Oh, don't start on me, man. Don't start.
What?
I've
never heard of her.
Shut up, man.
What?
I swear to God, you don't know who Seal is.
No, never heard of her.
It's a hymn.
Okay, even worse, but I've never heard of him.
It's from the Batman Forever soundtrack.
Oh, he was that weird dude who had that weird video.
He had those, and this is what he claimed. So he had those like scars on his face, and he said that he just woke up one day and they were there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like an excuse I'd make for something when I was married, 15 years old.
Who was the model he was married to for a while? She was on
Brad Pitt.
America's Got Talent. Shut up. I love Seal. I loved his music. So anyway,
I'm just not real familiar. But if he was that weird dude that done those weird music videos, you said Batman Forever, I might know who you're talking about. Anyway, let's go.
Yeah. The number 3 and number 2 songs were from TLC, Waterfalls and Creep. And the number 1 song of 1995 was Coolio's Gangsta Paradise.
Yeah, I had the CD.
I think I enjoyed the Weird Al version more. Amish Paradise, which I think was a year later. You remember that video?
What probably hit home more for you? You grew up around Amish country.
I did, yes. I did.
You were closer to Amish country than you were Harlem, so.
Very true. Oh, actually, I think Coolio's West Coast, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay, well, you're even closer then.
Top 5 albums of 1995. Cracked Rear View, Hootie and the Blowfish. That was the biggest seller of 95.
That probably got the 3rd most playtime in my truck that year. So yeah, it was way up there for me.
Me too. TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool. Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill was the third best. Mariah Carey's Daydream, and Garth Brooks' The Hits.
I had that one too. It probably got the fourth most play in my truck.
That was so that was a look at some of the top songs and albums. Here's just a couple of headlines in the music world. This was the year that Tommy Lee married Pam Anderson, and Lyle Lovett and Julia Roberts broke up.
She made such a mistake. Lyle Lovett was awesome.
He was kind of almost like the modern Elvis. I don't know if that even makes sense.
Of course, he was better looking than Elvis, though.
1995, the Beatles released the single "Free as a Bird." That was their first one in 20 years. I remember that being on the radio. I'm like, what? Okay. So, you got any other ones? What other ones were you listening to in the truck that you mentioned?
Well, it was older than this. You had CCR's album Chronicle, and you had Leonard Skinner's Golden Platinum double CD set. That got a lot of playtime in the truck. Not just mine either. Everybody was listening to that around here. So
okay, that 95. There's a few albums in kind of the alternative side. Probably not the. I don't know if you're gonna put them in alternative, but I got a lot of mileage out of the Collective Soul self-titled album that had like December and The World I Know. Got a lot of mileage out of Better Than Ezra's Deluxe. That song Good. Oh my gosh, I could put that on repeat right now. And then Dishwalla's Pet Your Friends. Dishwalla was kind of a one-hit wonder with the Counting Blue Cars, if you remember that song. But I could listen to that whole album too. It was great. So those three kind of pushed me towards the alternative, or, you know, I was listening to less like hip hop and rap at the time, but I still had some albums that I was buying throughout that year. So what are you going to throw in the time capsule as far as music goes?
Well, I'll put the Cracked Rear View album in. It'll fit nice in the CD player that I kept.
Okay. I had that written down, but I do have a backup that I'll throw in for me, and that was the Skee-Lo I Wish CD Max single. The song. Have you ever heard the song "I Wish" by Skee-Lo? I wish I was.
Ring a bell.
I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish I had a girl that looked good. I would call her. You don't remember that song?
Now I do. Now that you're butchering it and stuff, I recognize
I'm sorry, I'm not a singer. I remember I bought that Max single, which had like the radio version and like 3 different remixes. And that was played so much because that was me, man. I'm the basketball person, wishing he was a little bit taller and wishing he had a girl. That just, I don't know, connected with me to a T. So I'll throw that in as my music item for 95. Let's get on to some movies. And I don't think we're going to go in too depth on this just because, you know, we want you to go over there and listen to our drive.
Yeah, we're going to spend all year going in depth on this stuff. So
that's
just a tease.
Yeah, more of a tease for you. But let's just go ahead and list the top grossing movies of 95. Number 1 was Die Hard with a Vengeance. Number 2, I don't know if I've ever seen it. I don't think I've seen it.
It's my favorite of the Die Hards.
Yeah. I stopped at like number 2. I don't think I did see the one, whatever the latest one was, with that kid from the what was he? Was he a Mac? Was it the Mac commercials that he was in? Anyway.
Couldn't tell you.
So I don't even know if I've ever seen Die Hard with a Vengeance. Toy Story was number 2. I've got a very vivid memory about seeing Toy Story in the theater that I'll save for that episode on the drive-in. Just a ridiculous experience you're going to want to wait for that one. Apollo 13 was number 3. GoldenEye 4. Pocahontas number 5. Batman Forever 6. 7 was ironically number 7. Casper at 8. Waterworld at 9, and Jumanji at 10. And the best picture of the year in 1995 was Braveheart, which came in number 13 at the box office. So you going to throw in one of those into the time capsule, or are you going to go off on your own here?
I'll I'm going to put Apollo 13 in. Yes.
Okay, that's a good choice. Wouldn't deny that. That's I don't know. I've seen that
Well,
way more times than I've seen Braveheart.
Apollo 13, I've never seen Braveheart. Apollo 13 was the first movie I can remember where my mind kind of turned on movies as far as it was a real, I don't even know how to explain it. I watch movies for fun and enjoyment, and Apollo 13 was the first movie that I watched. It kind of blew me away visually. And I realized that, there's movies out there that are made for other purposes beyond just entertaining. That, this is big in scope, and it was everything. And it was the first movie. It was the first time I really appreciated the movie for everything about it, not just the laughs I was getting out of or the action scenes or whatever.
Right.
More of a grown-up awakening to movies, and that was Apollo 13. So
yeah, bigger than your $7 you're paying to watch something to entertain you for an hour and a half. Yeah. Well, that's a good choice. I think I'll put in. Gosh, what am I going to put in there? I think I'll put in GoldenEye, because that was just the start of the new James Bond era, and the streak that I have going of watching all these Bond movies in the theater. That was, I don't know, one of my favorites of the year. Definitely is GoldenEye. So I'll put that one in for our movie choice. Okay, let's get on to this larger category, which is technology, products, games, toys, that kind of thing. And this was essentially 1995, the first year that the internet was privatized and the government public funding really for the internet. And then we had America Online, the two big ones, America Online and Prodigy, were offering access to World Wide Web. And it seemed like you were stepping on CD-ROMs, like just walking down the street. You know what I mean? They're like everywhere to get you to get online, free trials, and get their browser, set up on your computer. And they were just everywhere. It's like a slew of CDs everywhere, CD-ROMs, to get you to start up on America Online or Prodigy.
And if you want to hear more about all that stuff, go back in our archives. One of the earliest episodes we done was all about the Wild West old school days of the internet. And we talked a lot about Prodigy and AOL. So go check that out if you're a newer listener.
Yeah. 95 was when we got Windows 95 too. Obviously.
Yes. Windows 95 was, it can't be overstated how much of a game changer that was. I mean, your modern operating system on your computer still kind of mirrors a lot of those, because before that, you'll remember Windows 3.1 when it was really Windows and there wasn't a start button down in the corner. And, Windows 95 brought all that. I mean, it was a real game changer.
Yeah. Plus it had Minesweeper.
So did Windows 3.1. But Windows 95 brought on the pinball. And game with the rats and the cheese and the maze thing and the downhill skiing game. You went for years on computers, you had Solitaire and Minesweeper. Windows 95 come along, you got like 3 or 4 more games.
Yeah.
It's great.
Free Cell and Spider Solitaire. And I got a lot of mileage out of that pinball, that spaceship pinball or whatever it was. A lot of mileage out of that. But that was me. Yeah, I didn't see, like I said, I never had a personal computer. So I can remember working at the radio station and playing like Minesweeper on the side if I'm doing like a late night shift and then nobody was around, So between commercials, I was playing Minesweeper. Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn were released in 1995, and the NES was officially discontinued by Nintendo. I'd never had a PlayStation, never had a Saturn. The only game I remember playing on a PlayStation was, I think it was called WCW Nitro.
Mm-hmm. That was a fun game. It was kind of like Street Fighter 2, but in a wrestling ring with wrestlers. It was, like the modern wrestling games are actual long matches and stuff. This was a quicker version, and they all had their special moves and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah. And but you got like these little lead in of them coming down the aisle, to the ring. And I don't know if you got their themes and stuff, but I don't know. I remember it being the closest to like watching wrestling that I've ever played like for a video game at that point. Miles past like WWF Superstars and stuff you'd play in the arcade.
I had a PlayStation in kind of the early days, and one of the cool things about it was this was on a CD, and
Right.
which made it just seem futuristic. And the way I love Pizza Hut had those game sampler discs that they would give you when you ordered a pizza, and it would have like 4 different games on it, and you
Really?
could I'm trying to remember what one of them was. There was a racing game on it was a popular racing game. It had like the first course, but that was all that was on there. But still, like, these games were expensive, and even though I had a job, you couldn't just go out and buy a game. Well, so I can only race one track, but if I want to play a racing game, I pop the Pizza Hut CD in. They had several different ones with 4 games each on them like that. That was a cool concept back then as a way for doing promotional tie-ins and getting your product out there in front of people. Really cool.
Absolutely. 95 was a big year for Yahoo. They formed the corporation and Yahoo.com launched, and I was hooked on Yahoo. That was basically my first experience on the web, was going through Yahoo, searching Yahoo, playing Yahoo Fantasy Sports, and that was my experience. Creating your own My Yahoo page later, I think that was probably a couple years later when they started doing that, and you could fill in all of those little places on your page with weather, sports headlines, whatever you wanted to do. And you went to one place. You had like your own personal homepage to get everything, and the internet essentially came to you, and you're not going to it. That's the first time I felt that kind of feeling. The internet was always this research tool, to me, especially in the college years and stuff. But having that My Yahoo, it was almost like the internet came to me personally. It was a game changer, I think.
And who would have thought Yahoo Serious from Young Einstein would have went on to create something like that?
Well, let's see what else we got going on. The Dodge Viper came out in 1995. I wasn't I was a Chevy person. My dad was, so we were huge into Corvettes. But I remember that was a big deal. And then that show came, the Viper. I don't know when that came out. If it was a couple years after that, probably.
No, I think it was concurrent, because the show was kind of like an hour-long commercial every week for the Viper.
Viper, yeah. Well, that was pretty big. BMW introduced the Z3 Roadster, which was the blue BMW that James Bond had in GoldenEye. Now, this was a fun little list I found. The highest rented video games, according to Blockbuster, this was kind of released through GamePro magazine. And see if any of these connected with you, because I didn't have a Super NES. I was a Genesis guy, but the top 5 SNES games rentals for 95: Donkey Kong Country.
All right. That was, I talked about having the rental store at the grocery store. I probably rented Donkey Kong Country at least once a week for about a year. So yeah, that was a big one. Yeah.
NBA Jam Tournament Edition. That was big.
Didn't rent it, went right and bought it. That was a good one.
Yep. A game called Killer Instinct. Don't know that one.
That was a big arcade hit. It had the guns. You had the guns that you would shoot and stuff. So yeah.
Okay. Justice League Task Force.
Nope.
Spider-Man.
I don't remember just the Spider-Man game. I had Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade Revenge. That was a really fun game.
And then the 5 for Genesis, NBA Jam Tournament Edition, which is what I remember renting, playing. World Series Baseball 95, Road Rash 3, NBA Action 95, and Judge Dredd. Those were the top rentals for Genesis in 95. Do you remember the game You Don't Know Jack? The trivia game.
Yeah, well, I don't think I ever played it, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh, it was huge for years. And that was like one of the first CD-ROM games I remember getting when we finally got a computer. It was right after we were married, so it would have been around 2000. I remember picking that up in the store, and it was whatever, You Don't Know Jack 5 or 12 or whatever it was at that point. But it was a whole franchise that was pretty popular, and just a kind of a trivia based game show almost type game that was huge. A couple toys that were hot in 95, Pogs. I never got into Pogs. I know you were big into them, you've said before.
Oh, yeah. We gambled with them.
Gambled with Okay.
I've gambled my whole life. My old man was anyway. Yeah, we gambled with them.
Okay.
Played for keeps.
Yeah. Like you said before, Beanie Babies were huge in 95. I remember those things going for like big bucks. Even in the later years on eBay, seeing Beanie Babies pop up for, 3 figures was not uncommon.
Right.
Now you can go to like the our antique mall, and there's a whole like booth of just Beanie Babies that you could get for a couple of bucks,
Yeah. Buy them as cat toys now.
Right, yeah. One of my favorite board games that I didn't get connected to until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago was Catan, Settlers of Catan. If you're ever into that game. That came out, the first edition of that, in 1995. So what are you going to throw in here as a time capsule item, as a product or piece of technology game?
I got to put 2 in.
Okay.
I got to throw some Pogs with a slammer in there and win a copy of Windows 95.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to put an AOL CD-ROM disc in there.
Well, that's a very good one too. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to put that in there for 95. All right, let's get on to some food. We love food. And of course, we're not going to put a piece of food in a time capsule, but
well, you never know. Go ahead.
Maybe it would last. All right,
if it was a Twinkie or something, it'd still be good.
Probably, yeah. All right, here's a couple things that came out in 95 as far as food goes. Starbucks released and copyrighted the name Frappuccino in 95.
Suburban women have never been the same since.
I tell you what, man, I used to pick up those 4-packs. You get some vodka, make some like White Russians. Oh, yeah, good stuff. The blue M&Ms replaced the tan color. I remember that. I remember that was all over the, television commercials and stuff. It was a big deal. Blue M&Ms.
Got to take the brown one out, don't they?
Pizza Hut. Hand over your heart, Mick. Introduced the stuffed crust pizza in 95, and the commercials and everything behind that of spinning that piece of pizza around and starting crust first.
Mm-hmm. Which was sacrilegious. I don't care what the crust has in it. You don't start with the crust. You finish with the crust. It's like a dessert after the slice.
I don't know.
Stuffed crust is still a big hit at Pizza Hut, so that's a big one.
And the marketing just behind that, I was like, all right, I got to buy a stuffed crust pizza and eat it backwards. I just have to do it.
But see, the problem with that is when you eat it backwards and eat the crust first, you have nothing to hold on to the rest of the slice with.
That's right. Yeah.
That is ass backwards marketing.
It worked though, man.
It did. Give them credit. It did.
95 was the first year for DiGiorno to start offering their frozen pizzas. That was a big deal. The cereal French Toast Crunch hit the market in 95. I love Cinnamon Toast Crunch, so I was all over that.
Mm-hmm.
Pepsi came along, introduced Josta. You remember this?
I do not.
It was an energy drink. First one, actually, by a major soft drink company, and marketed as a high-energy drink with guarana and caffeine was what they put in that thing. I don't remember it being one that I was going for, but I do remember it.
Jolt was advertised and positioned back in its beginning as an energy cola. So I'm not sure I guess because Pepsi's a much bigger brand, they can write history, but I'm not sure that was actually the first energy.
Well, I don't know if Jolt was marketed as energy. They were always, double the sugar and twice the caffeine, which I guess would be,
I have researched Jolt. They did position themselves in the beginning as an energy soft drink. Yes, they did, as an alternative to coffee.
Well, maybe saying the first drink as one of the major soft drink companies, because wasn't Jolt just kind of their own thing?
Yeah.
That's probably why they had that there.
That's why I said Pepsi's much bigger. They can write history. So
yeah,
it was them.
'95 was the first year of the Big Hardy burger, which was a competitor to the Big Mac. We didn't have Hardee's in my area, so I don't remember the Big Hardy. I remember when the Big King came around, but I think that was later. I don't know. Starburst jelly beans, first year for those.
Ooh.
In '95. And that's it of my food list. What are you going to put in as a time capsule item?
I'm gonna throw in a handful of tan M&Ms. The way they can live on forever.
You bastard!
What?
Oh, you just okay.
Well, you can throw some in too if that's what you're complaining
Well, if I'm
about.
going to put them in, I'm going to put in blue ones, not tan ones.
Oh, why would you do that? Blue ones
'Cause
still exist. The tan ones don't.
But it was the first year. That's like the commemorative edition of blue M&Ms.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
what I'm gonna put in is I'm gonna record the Pizza Hut stuffed crust commercial with Donald Trump, and I'm gonna record that on a VHS and throw that in.
Oh, nice.
I watched that just in preparation for this. I thought that was funny. Him and Ivanka. Anyway, let's look at sports for a little bit here. 1995. Let's just run through the champions here. Atlanta Braves won the World Series. It's also the first year that the wild card game was played in Major League Baseball. It's actually, I think the year previous, they adapted that rule for the playoffs, but they had the strike in '94, so they didn't even do the playoffs. So '95 was the first year for the wild card game. And also '95 was the year that Cal Ripken broke Lou Gehrig's streak of consecutive games played. 2,130.
That's impressive.
And he was the AP Athlete of the Year that year. I
For people
remember
who
that
may
being
not-
a big deal.
Yeah, for people who may not be sports fans and they hear something like that and they're like, you just got to take into account your own personal life. If you don't think that's impressive, have you went to work 2,130 straight days that you were scheduled?
Right.
Most likely not. Okay. And
Right,
this
yeah.
dude is engaging in a physical activity at his job.
Right.
And don't miss time. So
100 and what is it in the season? 162 games?
something like that.
Yeah.
And
So
traveling all over the country to go to work that many days.
right.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's an impressive number right there.
Uh,
You remember after he broke the record, then he took the next day off.
I
did.
think so. Yeah, I think so.
Well deserved, by the way.
No kidding.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that story's better when you put in the day off part of it.
Right.
I can imagine he calls the manager. Man, I'm sick. I can't make it in today. And the manager's like, you son of a bitch. You set the record. Now you're going to start calling in. I need a doctor's note.
The playoffs start tomorrow, man. What? I need a doctor's note. Yeah, that's great. The AP Female Athlete of the Year was Rebecca Lobo from University of Connecticut, who went undefeated that year, won the NCAA championship, women's championship. The Niners beat the Chargers in Super Bowl 29.
Yeah, they did.
Beat down the Chargers, I should have put in there.
I am a 49ers fan, and as we are recording this, they have a chance to go back. So keep your fingers crossed.
Okay. Nebraska beat Miami in the Orange Bowl to win the college football championship.
The black shirts.
UCLA won the NCAA basketball title over Arkansas, and that was the first time in, I want to say, like 20 years they got a title, something like that. That huge streak in the, what was it, 60s and 70s when they won all those titles. So they were back as champions. The Rockets sweep the Magic for the NBA title, and that was the early years for Shaq and Penny Hardaway.
That's what I was going to say. That was a Shaq O'Neal-led Magic.
Right. In golf, Ben Crenshaw won the Masters Golf Tournament for the second time, and Tiger Woods won the U.S. Amateur in '95. And the Devils swept the Red Wings for the Stanley Cup. So that's a little glimpse at '95 in sports. What are you going to put in as a time capsule item?
Cal Ripken's doctor's note from that day he took out.
That's good.
My mom actually bought me when the 49ers went to that Super Bowl. She bought me an official Super Bowl program off of QVC, and I would put it in.
I'm going to put in, I'm sure there was tons of commemorative trading cards for Cal Ripken's streak. So I'm going to find one of those and throw one of those in as the sports memory for 95. And then our last category in the time capsule is television. Here are some premieres in 1995. The Drew Carey Show.
Loved it.
I don't think I've ever watched an episode of the Drew Carey Show.
Now, when I say I loved it, I did love it, but I didn't get into it at the beginning. I got into it in the very late 90s when it was in syndication, and it was on every evening on my local Fox affiliate. I discovered it then and really liked it. So,
okay. Star Trek Voyager, which kind of kicked off the UPN network that year? I think that's right.
Yeah.
That was the first year for UPN. I think it was also the first year for the History Channel, the Golf Channel. There was another one in there I meant to put in the notes. Taxi Cab Confessions on HBO.
We'll back up just a second.
Uh-huh.
I can remember when the Golf Channel launched, and just people that I knew were like, who's going to watch the Golf Channel? But what perfect timing it had. Right at the start of Tiger Woods' ascent to stardom and stuff. Right. And he single-handedly made golf super popular countrywide for a long time.
That's right.
And the Golf Channel was a major hit because of that.
That's
so
right.
Good on them. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. Taxi Cab Confessions on HBO.
Loved it. Loved it. 17 years old, Saturday night, late night, watching Taxi Cab Confessions on HBO was like, that was awesome.
I don't remember.
It was usually followed by an episode of Real Sex.
Okay. I don't remember where I would have watched it, but I do remember watching some episodes somewhere because we didn't subscribe to HBO, so.
Well, we didn't either, but we had a black box, so we didn't have to subscribe.
I gotcha. Yeah. D-Scrambler.
Mm-hmm.
Single Out on MTV. That was a pretty big hit for MTV at the time.
I liked it, too. Jenny McCarthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Young Jenny McCarthy.
Mad TV on Fox. I would watch Saturday Night Live, and I do remember switching over. I think it was on at the same time, wasn't it? It was kind of like Fox's.
I don't know. I'd never watched Mad TV.
I was thinking it might have been on at the same time, or maybe it was a different time. But it seemed like I did watch some Mad TV when it first debuted. But
I almost want to say, didn't it come on Friday night? Wasn't it on a different night altogether?
I can't remember. I'll have to look it up.
Because I think it come on after like Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted and Cops and all that. I think it came on Friday night. I may be totally off base, but.
Well, while I'm looking that up, you can talk about Hercules and Xena Warrior Princess.
Well, I'll do my best. I never really watched either one, but I'll tell you a funny story from the grocery store. There was a guy who came into the video store every day and would rent a movie or whatever, and he was not as quick on the uptake as most of the rest of us, and he was a huge fan of Xena. And if I were in there, and I'm sure whoever was in running the video department heard it every day, but when I was in there, I would hear it. He would come over and talk about it like it was real. And he's like, yeah, on Xena tonight, she's got to escape this whatever, and I don't know that she's that strong, and da-da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, man, I'm sure it'll be all right. She got some kind of trick up her sleeve. Yeah, she's pretty smart. Yeah, she is. She'll get it. Don't you worry, buddy. It'll be all right. It'll be on again tomorrow. Don't you frown over there. That's the only Xena story I got.
Yeah, I remember flipping past channels and it being on, and I don't think I've ever watched a complete episode of either one. So just did not connect with me. And Mad TV did run on Saturday nights. It was a direct competitor to Saturday Night Live. So I guess my memories are right that I was kind of flipping back and forth to see what was going on between the two. And it ran for 14 seasons. Did not realize that.
For a long time.
And then the big one probably for you, and I would say me too, was that WCW Monday Nitro debuted in 1995. And I don't remember being there right away, but once I got to college in the spring of 96, we had this down in the basement of our dorm, we called it the dungeon, was one television. And basically it was whoever was down there first got to pick what we were going to watch. Okay. So we would run and get there early. So we had control, I mean, as in the wrestling fans. So we would have control of the television so we could watch Nitro down in that dungeon. So
it was a big deal. I started it from the beginning. Of course, I was watching weekly wrestling anyway, and then here's just another new show. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, Nitro created an excitement and an electricity like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it helped propel the wrestling boom of the 90s when wrestling just went crazy. It's when Vince McMahon became a certified billionaire at the end of it, there in the year 2000. It was exciting, and part of it, and you'll remember this from watching Nitro, they would hype up the Nitro parties for people to have, and you could send in your tape of your Nitro party, of your party watching Nitro, right. And they'd show part of it on the show. So it was infectious. It fed on itself, and people were like you guys getting together to watch it. It's crazy to think about a wrestling show being like that, but it was electric there in the late 90s.
And we would flip back and forth between Raw and Nitro, but it was mainly we were watching the complete Nitro, and we would flip during the commercials or whatever to see what was going on a little bit in the WWE world. I think it was still, I don't know when the switch made between WWF and WWE, but we would, because it was that was like Stone Cold Steve Austin era, right? And I'm trying to think what other bigger name wrestlers would have been on Raw as a competitor.
A very young Rock, Mankind, Undertaker.
Yeah. So, that was a big deal. And I don't know, it was just like the factions too on Nitro, and that the storyline between the NWO and WCW. And then, the NWO would eventually split. And so you had all these, you were fans of more or less factions than you were individual wrestlers. That's what I remember.
Let me tell you something. You're talking to somebody in the heart of Horseman country. You cannot talk about factions without mentioning the Four Horsemen first. Just throwing that out there. Just you've been warned for the next time.
Okay. So anyway, that was kind of my memories of that. So, and then just a couple more things that happened in '95 around television. This was the time that Drew Barrymore was on David Letterman. You remember this when she flashed? You don't remember that? No. I was a huge David Letterman fan, so we were watching that even a couple of years earlier when I'm in high school. It was cool to stay up late and watch Letterman, then come to school the next day and talk about what happened, because that was just a time where he's like throwing stuff out of windows and, crazy stuff that they would do during the show, not just necessarily the guests. But she came on, I think it was Dave's birthday, and she jumps up on the desk, does this like stripper dance, and flashes them with her back to the camera, obviously, and sits down. And it was just one of those moments that everybody was talking about when it happened. Like, what is she doing, man? She's just crazy. And then 95, this is the last little bit. 95 was the year that Walt Disney announced they were purchasing ABC and ESPN. And there's what else was in with that? I think there was something else. Anyway, that's where they just kind of, Walt Disney became bigger than life, and that started the whole chain reaction.
It would have been
buying Star Wars and Marvel.
It would have been right around that time too, because I think Marvel filed for bankruptcy in 95 when Disney bought Marvel. Mm-hmm. So it may have been at the same time, but it was really close, probably within a year and a half of this announcement. They actually bought Marvel, and oh my, look where we are now.
I was thinking it was later though. That was about the time they bought Star Wars, was when they essentially bought Marvel.
Well, they may have bought the Marvel
Studios.
But they bought Marvel Comics. I'm pretty sure they bought them out of bankruptcy back in the mid-90s. It's hard to think how big Marvel is now, to think that in the late 90s they were in bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
course, it has been 25 years ago. I still feel like it was like 10 years ago, but
yeah,
95's been a while now.
All right, so what are you going to throw in for your last time capsule item?
Ooh, Oh, I know. The third ever Monday Nitro was in Johnson City, which is not far from here. And I got to go, and they were handing out these prepaid calling cards that had Hulk Hogan on it and the Monday Nitro logo as a promotional thing, but it only had 3 minutes on it. I'm gonna put that in. And I used it to call the WCW hotline. So
nice.
Yeah, it was a 3-minute prepaid phone card. Of course, phone cards were a big deal back then.
Oh gosh,
yes.
Yeah.
Everybody had phone cards and stuff. So that was a not like as weird of an item as it sounds today. It was a really nice promotional item. They handed them out to everybody in the crowd. So I'm gonna put that in.
Yeah, that was big. My dad was like, anytime you call long distance, use that 1010 number. We had it like written on the fridge. That whole scene too, where 1010 321, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Before you call to get 5 cents a minute or whatever it was. Gosh. Anyway, I don't know if it was ever released, but maybe I'll just set my boombox up to the TV and record the NWO theme, and I'm going to throw that in.
Oh, it was released there. WCW put out that CD once upon a time.
Okay, well then I'm going to put that CD in then that has the NWO theme, because we were anytime that hit, and you heard it like 5 or 6 times an episode, just based on who was wrestling that night, and it was usually the single matches, but then they would also come out at one point and just talk and do their promos. So you heard it so much, and it just got ingrained in my memory that I love the NWO theme. So I'm going to throw that in as my time capsule item. So that's it, man. So that we went through there. We've made our time capsule. I didn't write down what all we threw in there, but we can go back and we'll let you, leave us a comment. Tell us what you would put in for some of these categories as a time capsule.
If you are an enterprising listener, leave a comment with all the stuff me and Jason put in too, so we don't have to go back and figure it all out again.
Yeah, we've been on for a while, so we'll go ahead and move on to our wrap up, tell you what's coming up on the Retro Network, and we'll be right back after this. All right, we're back to wrap things up on this week's episode, and what do we got coming up on the Retro Network, Mick?
Well, let's see. Last week, episode 2 of the Wizards Podcast Guide to Comics dropped. And if you're like me, you're loving it with just 2 episodes. I really wish they would go weekly instead of bi-weekly. Because there's an event, I hear them talking, and I know like a comic event is coming up soon, and I'm wanting them to hurry and get there so I can hear their take on it from back then. But people, like I said, we've pimped it a lot. It don't have to be comic book fans. They talk action figures and cards and other movies and stuff too. So give it a shot. Last week's episode of the Wax Pack Flashback was Saved by the Bell cards. This coming week, since football season is about to wind down, I'm opening a pack of 1990 action-packed football. And those were the cards that had the players puffed up out of the card.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. Oh, they're really nice. Really prestige cards. I loved them back then. So that'll be coming up. You've got an ESPN Plus article looking at the whole streaming service and stuff. It's probably already dropped by the time people hear this. Eric's Way Back Wednesday, where he's going through the music charts each week from 1983 and seeing how things rise and fall. Over on Patreon, I don't think we mentioned this on last week's show, but we have a new featured series dropping every Monday called TRN Fashion Files, looking at some of the hottest fashion trends and items from the 80s and 90s. Last week's piece was on the cool old alligator shirts that everybody had in the 80s. Well, all the cool people had in the 80s. Not everybody had them.
Yeah, that logo is everything.
And then this week, as you're hearing this, looking at body glove from the 80s and 90s and the trend that started in swimwear. And then next week, I'm going to get a little ahead looking at an old-fashioned manly scent, Brute Cologne. So if you are a Patreon subscriber or follower, go over and check those out. Those are Patreon exclusives. And starting in the very near future on Patreon, I'm going to start putting up a video of the week. Just something I come across that people may not have seen. It's not going to be produced by us, but stuff I find on YouTube, something retro themed and entertaining. And I'll probably put it up on Wednesday or Thursday to help you get over the hump in the work week. Maybe when your boss ain't looking, you can watch it. So
good deal. And then we've got another sequel quest coming up in a couple days here. It's going to be a new episode on a sequel to the 1959 Ed Wood film, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Now, I'm not familiar with this, so I just threw in the synopsis here. Residents of California's San Francisco Valley are under attack by flying saucers from outer space. The aliens intend to conquer the planet by resurrecting corpses in a cemetery. And then the living dead include a cape-wearing ghoul played by Bela Lugosi, a vampire, slow-footed cop who stalks curious humans who wander into the cemetery looking for evidence of UFOs. From what I've read, this is one of those so bad it's good movies. So I'm not familiar with the film, but it sounds like it's going to be a fun movie to do a sequel from.
The best way I can sum up my feelings on this is the most excited I have ever been for an episode of Sequel Quest. I love Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Okay. So. Well, you can hear that coming this Friday.
It's up there with Santa Conquers the Martians as so bad it's good type movie.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Well, Santa Conquers the Martians has universally been named the worst film of all time, but it's in that so bad it's good territory, though.
I got you. Okay, well, that's all I've got as far as TRN stuff. Did not see any feedback of note this week, but please, we want to hear your feedback. We want to hear those time capsule items from 95 that you want to throw in with ours to create this, and let us know how the episode went, if that's something you want to hear more of. I was telling
from
Mick,
different years, and
we could go back into the 80s, whatever year or whatever we want to cover, maybe something that will pop up in the recent news that we can go back. Okay, let's go back and explore that year, So we're going to keep that kind of open, but would love to get your feedback on the episode, what you thought. And you can find us, of course, over there on TRN Social, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you want to send us a note. We are at RD80s for me, at Yesterdayville, if you want to leave a personal note for us or a message. And then, as always, we'd appreciate your 5-star review in whatever app you are listening to right now. We would very much appreciate that. And I've still been doing some more reaching out, Mick, to there's just so many apps you can use to get podcasts. And some of them are good about pulling, your feeds, what's the latest feeds from, Apple, iTunes, or whatever. Some you have to intentionally go to them and say, hey, add my feed. So I'm trying to get everywhere, man. I want to get the word out. So if we're not in an app that you use or like to use, let me know, and I'll get that taken care of so you can listen to us in your favorite app.
And there are a few old school folks who don't use apps, who like to just play it right off the website. And like we mentioned at the top of the show, we've made that easier. There's a big embedded player with the last 5 or 6 podcasts on the feed. All you got to do is hit play and listen to it while you're browsing the rest of the Retro Network. So we even got you old school heads covered.
Yeah, that's right. We don't have it, remember when you'd go to a website and something would start playing and you're like, what? No. So we don't have it set like that. But once you click on it, it's going, and you can go, you'll get the last, I think 6 episodes are available for you to just go ahead and click and play right from the website, the homepage. So yeah, man, if you want to do it that way, go for it. And same with our videos, the Wax Pack Flashback, we're going to keep that up on the homepage so you can just play from there. You're not clicking through to several different places just to get to YouTube to watch something. So trying to make it more convenient for you to get your retro fix. So for Mickey, this is Jason. Thanks so much for listening this week, Mick. I hope it's a less busy week for you coming up. And we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Retro Network Podcast channel. Make sure you listen to all of the great podcasts we have to offer right here in this feed. If you enjoy our channel, please give us a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast app. Connect with us on social media by following TRN Social. And visit the retronetwork.com website for your daily retro fix. Come back next week for another episode of the Retro Network Podcast.